So today what I wanted to talk about is BackAgent and some tips and tricks within BackAgent, because it's really the tool that everyone is going to use the most as you do business, as you have transactions going. And there are some shortcuts on how to do things, or just some thoughts. And again, I'm recording this so you guys can refer to it later on. And what I'm going to focus on primarily is, creating transactions and dealing with transactions, adding documents to the transaction. Also, how you can cancel the transaction if, for example, let's say you're working with a buyer and you're writing an offer for the buyer and you upload the offer into the system, and now you go forth and back and the buyer walks, or you may have it on a contract and the buyer does their inspections, or something happens, or for whatever reason the contract gets canceled. So what do you do then moving forward with that transaction? How do you archive that transaction and start over a new transaction? Very similar to Linda, you had the situation with your listing. It went on a contract, so now they cancel it, and we get another buyer coming, goes back on the contract. How do you duplicate these files? So I'm just logged in as me right now, and I don't have any transactions here. So I'm just going to create a dummy transaction, and then I'm going to go through a couple of different ways you can add documents to the transaction, and then how we can cancel the transaction and restart it. Very, very important, just as a pointer to you, David, when you scan these multi-page documents and it scanned each of them as a separate PDF file, you may want to take a look at your scanner settings if there is a way to have them combined, as opposed to, it's usually in scanner software, there's just a setting where when you scan multiple pages, does it combine them or does it separate them? So you probably have it set to separate them. But even if you have a bunch of different individual documents, we can deal with it. So I'm going to just create a transaction, and I'm going to present that I'm working with a buyer. So I click on residential, and it's always going to be sale or listing. We don't really do rentals. And let's just say that I'm actively showing properties, and I'm representing the buyer. Okay, so the first thing that always has to happen is that you have to have a party, a buyer. Okay, I'm just going to pick me, and as I type in things, you see it being populated. I'm going to select that contract. So right now, at this stage, the buyer is the only party that's in the transaction, and I'm going to save. Now, if I were at the contract stage, I would also have to enter the other party. For example, you have your listing in there at the contract stage right now, but you haven't put in a buyer yet.
Right.
So you got to put the buyer in there. You got to put the listing agent in there, and the system will tell you what is needed, because you won't be able to request funding and get paid until everything is done that needs to be done. So in this case, right now, at this particular stage, I'm in the showing stage here. I need the property information and dates and info. So let's say I'm showing a property and I'm writing an offer. I could go in here and enter a property for every time that I'm showing a property. I think it's overkill, because we want to keep it simple. But I do want to go into the dates and info section here and maybe put in, when did I first start working with this person? Let's say November 1st. Is it a company lead? Yes or no? Very important. So if it's a company generated lead, then at closing it will know to charge the fee. Will any other party get a referral fee from me on this transaction? Yes or no? So if you have a referral where, Sally Sue in Orlando referred you this buyer and you need to pay them a 25% referral commission, you obviously would answer yes, and then put her information in there. So I'm done here in this area here. Under the document tab, you see it grayed out, which means it recommends a document, but is not required. So it's recommending the buyer representation agreement, like a buyer agency agreement, but it's not required. Okay. Now, depending on what stage you're in, you're going to see these placeholders like buyer representation agreement, contract, the buyer info agreement, property disclosure, and there are obviously many, many other types of documents that could be attached to the file. There's no placeholder for offer or counter offer or second offer or third offer as you're working with this person, you know. So if I'm writing an offer on something now, again, by law, as a broker, we have to retain that, you know. So an offer is not something, well, you know, delete it, I don't need it, you know, it was just an offer. You know, if we get audited, if there's ever any kind of issue going on about anything, and we get sued or we get audited, you know, we have a 5-year record keeping requirement. So so how do you do that? How do you upload an offer when there's no tab for an offer? So there are 2 ways to upload documents within BackAgent. The first one is to click on one of these links here for a required document. So let's say, for example, we had a buyer agency agreement. You know, we could just click on here and go to attach document, and that will already, the system will know that we're going to upload a buyer agency agreement. Okay, so let's do that, and let me just upload a blank buyer agency agreement for this person. So I can upload a file from your computer, or I can select the file from inbox. Every agent has an inbox with a separate email address that you could have documents sent to, but it really is a pain in the butt trying to then pick it apart from the inbox to assign to a file. So it's much easier to upload from a computer. So I'm just going to go here and upload a computer. And there are 2 ways you can deal with this. You can drag your files onto here, so you can highlight multiple files and drag them, or you can go here to upload file. Okay, so I'm going to go here to upload file, and I'm just going to find something. Let me go here into the where we have our contract forms. Let's see here. I'm sure there's a buyer agency agreement in here somewhere. Let's see. Is there? Maybe not. Doesn't matter. I'm just going to grab something. I'm just going to use this form. And I could click open, you know. I could select multiple files and upload them. Okay, and we'll try to do that later for a different type of document. So here I'm just going to upload one document. And so there are 2 pages to the document. I can click on it to see what the page is. And let's say both of them are part of the buyer agency agreement, then I can select both of them. You know, if just one of them was part, then I can select just one of them, and the other one is still here to be then used for something else, and we'll get to that in a second. So I'm going to select all of them and then create document. And because I started out by selecting that placeholder document, buyer agency agreement, it already has in here, you selected the buyer representation agreement. You could change the title, but that's what I wanted to upload, so we're good to go there. I'll just save the document, okay? But now let's say we also wanted to upload an offer, you know? So I can't use the residential contract because that's the final executed effective contract. You know, that wouldn't be an offer or a counter offer or something. So the second way to upload documents is not by clicking here and selecting attach document, but by going up here where it says add document, okay? And when you click on add document, it starts you out the same way here, upload file from computer. And I'm going to click on upload files. And this time I'm going to select the contract for sale, but I'm also going to select another 2 documents to show how you can upload multiple documents. So I click here, and so it's uploading these multiple documents. So if you scan in a contract and it happens to be 20 thumbnails, oops. That's not nice. Go back here. Let's try this again. Technical difficulties, you gotta love it, of course. this again. With my luck, it'll just upload them twice now. Please work. Ah, brother. Okay, that's fine. Let's go back to the transaction documents. Unrendered XFA fields, whatever that means. So let's go back here and try a different document. Let me see. What can we use that may be clean?
What I like about this is that you can upload the whole contract and separate it out into different documents.
Yep, and we'll get to that. So let me see here. Let's go to the VIP buyer agency agreement. These are documents that I created, so they should have no funky internal things. So let's see if this works. Please work. Yeah. So these are the different files that I selected, right? Now it could be that if yours is just PDF 1 through PDF 10, it'll have, PDF 1 through PDF 10, and you may need to pick it together, So if this was the contract here, I could just select all 7 pages, okay? But I can also go through, maybe they're all mixed up. So I'm just going in here to see, okay, what is page 1 of the contract, okay? So let's say this would be page 1, and for argument's sake, this might be page 2 of the contract, and then we got 3, 4, 5, and that would be the contract, okay? But the files that you here uploaded also include your seller's disclosure and a bunch of other stuff. Or let's say, you scanned everything into one document, like we did with that offer document of yours. So you have the contract in there, and you have the seller's disclosure in there, and you got your HOA disclosure in there, and you got your lead-based paint in there, and so forth. So you may have multiple documents. So right now, we just selected all of these here, and then we click on Create Documents, and now it's going to ask us, okay, what kind of document is it? Okay, so we selected 5 pages. We can change that if we missed something. And now down here, we can select what this is going to be, okay? Now, we were saying it was an offer, okay? So I'm looking here. Interestingly enough, there's a counter offer tab, but I don't see an initial offer. We can't use the contract tab because once you use it up, you can no longer use it again within that transaction. There's obviously only one contract, So what you can do within any of these categories, for example, here's a pre-qual or commitment letter. Well, you wouldn't want to put a pre-approval in there because the pre-approval is not the commitment letter that satisfies the financing contingency. So in any of these sections, the contract sections, in the collateral sections down here, you have this other document tab, okay? Addendums, you got all sorts of addendums, and then other contract addendums and amendments and other contract amendments, So if the document you uploaded doesn't fit one of the pre-configured tabs, don't force it in there because I'm going to reject it, but just create a new one. So you can go here to other documents, and it allows you now to rename this here, okay? So we can call this here 123 Any Street First Offer, okay? And you now have the option to save document and quit, or save and add another. If you just save and quit, then all these other tabs will remain linked to the transaction, and when you go to create another document down the road, it'll have it available for you. Or we can go here and click on Save and Add Another. So if we click on Save and Add Another, it takes us back to where we were here, and now we got these remaining things here, These were already used, so we can't use them again. So you can use them again, but they were already used previously. And then we have here home warranty guarantee, all the other documents that I had, So if I wanted to, I could, let's say, these two things could be my lead-based paint, you know. So we'll go here, create document, and under addendum, there should be lead-based paint disclosure. Yep, here we go. We'll just select it. Okay, so it selects the lead-based paint. You can change it if you want to. You can click save and add another and go through all the documents that way that are still remaining to be put into other tabs, you know. So let's say this was now, you know, some, yeah, CDD acknowledgement, whatever it might be. So that's how we can go through it. And if you go now to the document tab, you're going to see all of these new documents that were put in here. Obviously, we don't have the contract yet because we're not in the contract stage yet. You know, we're just right now writing offers. So let's say, for example, we now have an executed contract. So the person is going to accept our offer or counter offer. So then we'll just advance here and click on the next stage, which is contract. Okay. So now it's going to advance to the contract stage, and you'll see a whole bunch of new yellow tabs that need to be satisfied where there's information. So the first one is obviously the property. Okay. So the property is required. So we're going to set the property, and we can find it by the MLS listing, or we can just enter the basic info. I don't know an active listing out of the top of my head right now, so we'll just go here and enter the basic info. But with the MLS listing, it's the easiest. You either type in the address or the MLS number, and it searches for it and populates it, including photos and everything, you know. So I'm just going to put in here any street in Bradenton.
So can you do that after the fact, after the contract? So I don't think I've put the MLS number in that.
Well, let's take a look. So we're going to set the property here. Okay, up. List sale price is required. List price. So it's listed for $199,900. Okay. So now we got the property in here. You can view on Google Maps. You can go in here to edit property, and you can pull it out of the MLS. But bear in mind, it's only going to pull from the MLS if it is a active listing.
Oh, right.
So once it is put into pending, you won't be able to pull it from the MLS.
Right.
You know.
Okay.
So when there's a fully executed contract, right away you should do that at the property,
Right.
not sit on it for 2-3 days. Because, you know, the other agent has to act together. Guess what? The next morning, he or his office are going to change the listing to pending, as they should, and then you won't be able to pull it anymore. So then you're going to have to enter it manually. So, but anyhow, getting back here, the property has been set now. And contacts, you see there are 2 more new contacts here required. So now we have to add the seller. And the seller, let's say, was Glenda. She was selling me her rental property. She got tired of. She doesn't like the tenants. So I'm going to select this contact. And let's say the agent, when a seller's agent, what do you know? It was our very own David that listed it. Select contact. So we got this here. Then we move over to dates and info. And here's going to ask us some questions that will help determine what kind of forms are really required, you know. So when was the contract executed? Let's say today, just now. So we'll save that. How long is the inspection due diligence? Okay, so let's say there is a 15-day inspection period. What's the closing date on the contract? So let's say closing is December 19th. Is the seller a foreign person? Terpta, yes or no? We need to know. No. Ownership status of the property. So is it conventional resale, build a new construction, hard foreclosure, REO foreclosure, or a short sale? Let's say it's a conventional resale. Was the property built before 1978? Yes. Now we already uploaded the lead-based paint. Is the property subject to owners association? Say yes. Could be condo or HOA. Come on, save. Now, is there a sinkhole on the property? No. What is the contracted sale price? So we paid, let's say $195 even. What type of financer is the buyer using? Okay, conventional, FHA, blah, blah, blah. So let's say VA mortgage. And that now gives us the contract documents that are still required. Okay, so we obviously need the residential contract. We need the buyer property info and agreement. We need the FHA VA financing addendum. We need the homeowners association addendum. We need the seller's property disclosure. And we need to get a wood destroying organism report, which normally is optional, but with FHA VA, it's mandatory, So that's why it puts it here as a yellow, as a required thing, okay? So again, we can go in here now and attach the documents, right? There's also an option in here called request exemption. So let's say, for example, the seller's property disclosure was already uploaded as part of the offer, or it was uploaded as part of another document. We can go in here and request an exemption. So we can request an exemption, and it'll pop up a reason. Okay, well, it's part of offer document, for example. And so you request an exemption. I get the request to review all of these documents, and then if I see the exemption, if it makes sense, then I'll grant it. Now, bear in mind, if the seller does not have a seller's disclosure and they're saying, well, I never occupied the property or something, really they should still provide a seller's disclosure, because there's an option for them to say that they never occupied the property, and they can answer no to whatever. If they don't do it, then I would definitely have some kind of addendum to the contract, that seller refused to provide a seller's disclosure, doesn't have a seller's disclosure. Usually, when you write an offer, you should ask the listing agent for all the disclosures, and if there's no seller's disclosure, you know that, so you write that in the additional terms under your contract. The only exception would be REO, bank-owned property sales. The REO asset manager, they don't give a flying hoot about what you would like. They do things their way, with their forms, when they want, how they want, and where they want. So again, on an REO property, you're never going to receive a property seller's disclosure. So I would just put in the additional terms right in there, seller's disclosure not available. The seller's disclosure is not a legally required document. Remember, by law, the seller is required to disclose any known facts that may affect the value or desirability of the property. But there's no law that says there must be a seller's disclosure. It's not like a homeowners association disclosure. The law states very clearly, if you don't provide an HOA disclosure, then the buyer has 3 days right to cancel from the time that they have provided disclosure all the way until closing. So if you have an HOA and there's no disclosure provided, the buyer could back out all the way until the last second. With the seller disclosure, that's not the case. But de facto, we do have it as part of all contracts, so it is a required document in here. And so you just go through here and upload the documents. So let's say, for example, we already uploaded all the documents in here. And we can now go into one of two scenarios. One would be to go into pre-closing, which is where we get ready to close the transaction. We can click on submit to submit and go through the questionnaire that will start the funding authorization. There are two types of funding. There's table funding and standard funding. Table funding means you get the check at the closing table, and the closing agent gets a disbursement authorization that says pay this much to David and this much to Realty Partners. Standard funding would be the check goes to Realty Partners, and then once we get the check, we pay you. So you always want to select table funding when at all possible. all of these yellow things will have to be satisfied in order to go through here and request funding. For example, now you see a new yellow thing here on the Contacts tab. So within the Contacts tab, we now need to have a closing agent, title agent, is required. Can't do a funding request without having the closing agent in here. Now, normally you probably would put that in there when you first, when you get your contract and set up the file. But it's really kind of like dumbs it down and put, just make sure that nothing gets missed. Under the dates, it'll ask you for the actual closing date. On the document tabs, you'll see that there's still these documents missing that we haven't uploaded, Let's say, for example, now that we are in a situation, though, where the person walks, okay? So let me go back to my transactions here, and I got my 1234 Annie Street, Bradenton, and it was all in the contract. Everything moved along fine, and I was ready to close, but there was that inspection period, and for whatever reason, everyone used the as-is contract that allows the buyer to walk. It's funny, not to sidetrack here, but nobody ever used an as-is contract until the whole meltdown started and everything was short sales and then later REOs, where of course everyone has to use an as-is contract. So now we're past that. Very few people are doing REOs or short sales, but like little monkeys, every agent is using an as-is contract because that's how it's been done for the last 3, 4, 5 years. Not really understanding that, at least from a buyer's perspective, an as-is contract is usually, from both buyer and seller perspective, can be a bad thing, because a traditional contract can force the seller to make certain repairs, which with an as-is contract you don't. From a seller's perspective, if somebody has an as-is contract, they can decide to cancel for any reason. They wake up on day 14 of the inspection period and don't like the way their toe looks and decide to walk. Whereas with a standard contract they can. So but it's interesting. I personally wouldn't use an as-is contract unless demanded by the other party. But anyhow, let's say so we screwed up. We used an as-is contract, and now the buyer canceled. The buyer walked because they realized that the HOA dues are $12 more than they thought they would be, or something. So what do? Well, we'll go ahead and cancel the transaction. So there's a link here, right underneath these tabs, that says cancel transaction. We're going to cancel the transaction. And there are 3 different ways under which a transaction can be canceled. One could be that David is just super detail oriented, and whenever he starts working with a buyer, he immediately starts a transaction for them. So long before there is a contract or anything, which is fine. So, but he doesn't have a contract or anything to cancel, so there's nothing. He just needs to cancel the transaction. The buyer disappeared, never to be heard of, and so he just needs to close it out. So in that case, you can just click here. No, I just need to cancel the transaction. But let's say there's an executed contract to terminate. Then we would use this. This here we could also use when there's just an offer. I mean, let's say if we made an offer on a property and the seller didn't accept it, there's no contract, so we don't have to terminate a contract. So we can just click here and just cancel this transaction. So the core difference between these two here is that if you click on here, it's going to require a cancellation and release document in order to complete the cancellation, okay? If you click down here, you don't, because there's obviously no cancellation and release. So we were at the contract stage, so I'm just going to click here, but otherwise they're both the same. So now it's going to ask, okay, do you need to terminate or cancel? I mean, there's a difference. Are we terminating working with that buyer, so we're done with it, or are we continuing to search for a new property with that buyer? Or in your listing case, well, put it back on the market and find another buyer. So in this case, terminating means we're just going to sever ties. We're done with this person. Cancel this transaction means that we'll continue to work on behalf of the client. Okay. So then here we're given 2 choices again. restart the transaction if you're still working with a client, or just terminate it. Okay, so don't you done with the client, click this, but if you restart the transaction, then you click here. And it basically creates a duplicate file. So you already have that buyer's information in there, or if it's a listing, you already have the property information and so forth in there. So you don't have to redo everything. And then you click begin termination, and that's it. So the termination process has been started, and then I'll get the request in the back office and complete the termination. So we have here now the status of this transaction is termination, right? So let me go back to transactions here. So I got now 2 transactions here, right? This is the one that we terminated. It says down here, termination stage. It's still active because I haven't signed up on the termination, so to speak. And this one here is the buyer, Thomas Hyman, new transaction. It's at start right now, and it's obviously active. So, so that way, when you're working with a buyer and you make an offer and it doesn't work out, you don't have to redo everything. It'll just terminate the old file and set up a new file for you. If you have a listing and the listing, it's under contract, but then the buyer walks, well, you don't have to redo everything. You obviously have to cancel the transaction with that buyer, that contract, all that stuff, and it creates a new file. Okay, so that is one way of going about it. Now, let's take a look at a couple of other things here. And I think it's, let me see, where do I find this? I'm looking for my own settings. Okay, look at that. I'm the CEO. All right. I'm trying to find the email address that is associated with each person. Let's see here. Post notes, office note. Let me see. Contact info. No. Oh, you know what? It's probably up here. Inbox. Never mind. Yeah. Well, no. Can I impersonate you real quick, David?
Of course.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and.
Thanks for asking.
The thing is, when you impersonate an associate in here, it sends a message to you. So I'm going to you right now, and I'm going to impersonate the associate. So it's going to send you an email that I'm impersonating you, and that when I'm done. So let me go up here to your inbox. I'm trying to find that special email address for you. I've never used it, so that's why you go into this transaction on the documents. Let me see. But that would give me the email address for that transaction. Office. This takes you to the inbox. Profile. I don't want to edit any preferences. I'll have to dig around in that. I mean, again, there is a way to have a unique email address that you can email documents to that will go straight into your inbox, and then when you upload a document, you have that option, select from the inbox, So
D. Jacobs at realty-partners.com.
No, it's like a gobbledygook code at
Okay.
you have an address in here. There are 2 kinds of inboxes. You can have an address for each transaction, so you can email documents directly to a transaction. It's going to be some long gobbledygook string at backagent.net, and you have an inbox just for you that like for you, your account, and that's also a string at backagent.net. I've never used it because it's a pain in the butt remembering all of that. You see here's send documents. Maybe that's how we can get to the. Yeah, see, this is your transaction email address. Okay, so you got this partners-kc blah 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 at send to backagent.com. It's just crazy, It's just so much easier to upload documents from your desktop,
Yeah, this is a process of making it as simple as possible.
Yeah, I mean, here you're just inviting trouble. I mean, let's say, for example, you're working with another agent, and you're going to say, okay, Glenda, that signed addendum, send it to partners-kc6bga6 blah 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 at send to backagent.com. Glenda's like, okay, no problem, but you misspelled like one letter, it'll never come, So it's just much easier to send it to Jacob, David at Jacobs SQ at David at davidjacobsSQ.com, and then he'll get his email and he can save it to his desktop and then upload it, So it just makes much more sense to go about that way. But in theory, you have an inbox that you can get documents from. So when you go here, like let's say you attach document, you have this option from your inbox, So I'm going to file inbox. Okay, so here's the inbox address. Now this is for the files. Yeah. So I don't use it, so don't worry about it. So again, we went through setting up a transaction, uploading some documents. There's two ways to upload. One is to click on the placeholder for the document. The other one is to click on just add document and select the placeholder. You can create your own placeholder if it's not in there. Very, very important. So don't upload a seller's property disclosure and use the VA disclosure placeholder or something, As you progress through the transaction, the system will tell you what kind of documents are required. So the yellow tabs at the top will always tell you where something is still missing in the transaction. If for some reason you cancel the transaction, you can cancel it either by terminating it, which completely, cancels the transaction and that customer, the buyer or seller, or you can just cancel the transaction but continue to work with the buyer or seller and it'll create a new file for that person moving forward.
So if you use the terminate, it still saves that for the.
So yeah, nothing in here. There's no way to delete a transaction. Once the transaction is started, it's in there, and everything gets tracked. So let me go to the transaction that I terminated here, or canceled. Okay. Every transaction has this thing at the top here that says Notes and History. So when you click on that, Notes and History, it's going to give you a timestamp of everything and anything that was done with respect to this transaction from the time it was created. Okay. So there's no way to
lose anything
or kill anything. Everything is in here. Now, also from your document tab, just so you know, let's say, for example, you've been uploading everything and for whatever reason, you decide that I would like to have a copy of all the documents related to this transaction, Well, in the thing here, you have a download all icon, okay? So you want to download a large zip file archive? Yes. So it's going to create a zip file for this transaction that you can then download to your desktop. That's going to have all of the files in it. Okay. So if you wanted to, at the end of the day, once the transaction has closed and we have everything in there, from the very start to the very end, including the closing statement, and you had them all scattered over your computer before and you have no clue where this one is now or where that one is now, you can download a zip file that has everything in it, you know. So this zip file here that I just downloaded, for example, come on, open up. Darn it. Where's the zip file that I just downloaded? Here. So it unzips it into a folder when you extract it, and so it has all of the PDF files in here, you know. So it has a name, the community disclosure, presentation, net-based paint, exemption, request, whatever. So you have the ability from your transaction to download everything at the end. You know, some agents want to have a record of everything that they have, you know. So, any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
No,
Mike,
go ahead.
I have 2 or 3 questions. I hope I remember them all. The first one is, I guess at this stage, I'm going to send my customer a complete set of documents.
Very good. Great question.
Capture.
Well, I'm glad you asked. So what you can do is, I mean, you obviously could download all these documents and send it to the person, you know, send them a PDF file. Now, you can also go to contacts and send an email. So let me go ahead and send an email to Glenda. Okay, we'll send Glenda a message. So,
My signature already in there? Or at the building? You have your signature that just came up.
yeah, it creates a custom signature in there.
Okay.
Actually, hold on. There's a different process for emailing documents. Let's go to the document tab here. And so here are the documents that we have in there. So I can select multiple documents and send and share, okay?
I would use this most with my funding source, with my title company, with the customer.
Well, I'm gonna get to that. So I can send an email, send by email, and then send it to you. So you see what it looks like, okay? So you're gonna get an email now with all of these attachments on it. So that's the first way you can share documents, okay? Another way you can share documents is what's called roundtable. Roundtable is where you can share documents with parties. They get their own email with a login, so they're gonna have to log into the system, but then they can also leave comments and things and even upload documents. So you do that from the contacts tab, okay? And so let me go here to David. Let me see, where is the, well, you know what, I think you do it from the document tabs as well. Go back to the document tabs. And when you create the roundtable, so you're going to select again the documents and send and share, but now you share to roundtable. Okay, so when you share to a roundtable, you can obviously only share it with members in the transaction. When you email, you can email to anyone. So let's say we create this roundtable here, and
You don't have to hit it, I know.
and share now. Okay. So you can share documents, you can share dates, things like that. My experience with these roundtable type sharing things, and I used it, you know, back when we had our title company and did thousands of transactions, we used a software too that allows you to share things. Nobody ever used it, you know. I mean, I think maybe out of 400 agents, 2 of them ever logged in to look at stuff, because really, I mean, first of all, you have all the documents, you know, so what do you need to log in to share, you know? If you're a buyer or seller, you have a copy of the contract, a copy of all the disclosures and everything, you know? So it really, nobody's going to log into another software so they can chat, you know? You can just chat on your text messenger or send an email.
Pre this, while we're on here, we're requesting electronic signatures from people.
Mm-hmm.
So we send out we're going to send something to them from the system to get electronic signatures. That would be the offers.
If you want to, I mean, right now we use DocuSign for electronic signatures.
So I have to capture that document and bring it in here.
Exactly.
Download it in PDF.
Well, again, when you do the DocuSign thing and you send someone a document for electronic signature, you add yourself to the CC lists. So once everyone's signed, you get an email with a PDF of the document. You know,
Okay.
so then you can just download it to your desktop and upload it into BackAgent. You know, what you could do is you could create a contact in your address book, and let's say call it BackAgent, and you could use your inbox email address for that, and then you could forward that email from DocuSign into BackAgent, or you could go ahead and actually CC BackAgent with it. You know, create a contact in DocuSign, but just make sure that you call it, you know, BackAgent DJ, for example. So, because if both of you do it, then you know you might end up using Glendo's BackAgent record in DocuSign to do that. So again, let me try to figure out how to come up with the address in here
To the parties?
for your general inbox. Okay, this is email partners at. Let me go back into your thing. This bugs me now. And if I can't get this figured out in the next 10 minutes, then I will do it at home and email you once I have. But
You'll get it done by 4 o'clock.
so I'm here. Let me go up here into no email and okay, setup. So maybe you have to create a custom email for yourself.
There you go. Simple.
Okay. All right, perfect. So you can call this here, let's say you have a very unique email address, right? David Jacobs SRQ, right?
So it just needs a name. It doesn't need an actual address.
Yeah. So David Jacobs SRQ at sendtobackagent.com. Okay. So now here we go. So you could now go ahead and create a record in your address book, call it BackAgent, and use that email address. So then you can forward emails that have PDFs in them to that address, and it'll get it. You know. So let's try something real quick, just for fun. I'm going to go into my email. Oh, I'm already in here. Go into my Gmail. I'm just going to use my personal Gmail. It's okay. So I'm going to create email. I'm going to send an email to that address, right?
Mm-hmm.
Testing document. I'm just going to attach. Yeah, here we go. Property tax bills. It's a big document. I'm going to send it. So it's sent. So I'm going back in here into your inbox.
Big job, it's taking time.
Files are processed within 30 to 60 seconds. So you could do the same thing in DocuSign, you know, where you CC yourself. You could CC and then put that email address in there and just call it BackAgent David Jacobs, you know, first name BackAgent, last name David Jacobs or something, because then next time around when you type in BackAgent, it'll find that, so you don't have to remember the email address, and then it'll just email you to your personal email address because you see it yourself, but also email directly into your general inbox in BackAgent. And so here it is. So here's the testing document, right? So if I'm going to go now into your transaction here, and let's say I'm going to add a document. Let's call it a test document, right? I'm going to select the file from the inbox. So I'm going to go here, and here it has a received file. So it ignores all the email crap, you know, the stuff that's in there. I can just click select file and then pick it apart and what have you not, you know. So so that's another way of doing it.
I know you have to leave. Could you go back to my document section? Because that's one of my problems today.
Okay.
I made a lot of mistakes using the system and put things in where they shouldn't, or didn't put things in where they shouldn't. And
Okay.
I'd like to reverse them.
Okay, very good.
I pretty much know how. Can you reverse those things?
Well, here, for example, I rejected, right?
So I have those documents separate because they got confused on my computer.
So here we go. What we can do is you click on this, and it gives you an option. You can view the document that was rejected. You can essentially view source document. You can reattach the document, or you can remove now.
Never read that far.
You know, so if you click remove now, it just clears it. Okay.
Okay.
So that's how you would clear it up. Let's say, for example, you upload a contract, and that contract is missing the seller's initials or signature or something. I'm going to reject it. So then you can just go ahead and reattach document, and then upload the correct document to put into that placeholder. You know, so that's it. That's how you would do that. And
no, I wasn't familiar enough with this. I've got those signatures on the contract. I've taken copies of the contracts to the title company and to the lender.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't use this system.
Yeah. So next time you can just go ahead and email them a copy of the contract. You know,
but you need to keep track of what I did. What I'm trying to, I have to put them in here somewhere or notify you that.
Well, you need to upload the documents.
Right.
So that
This
you need
won't
to
happen
do.
again. This
Yeah.
is an exception.
So I mean, right now here, for example, is this a VA or
VA.
It is a VA.
No, I'm sorry, FHA.
Okay. So, but let's go ahead and remove this because what you uploaded was not the VA FHA addendum. And let's go here.
I have that today.
And then this here, seller's property disclosure, that wasn't either, it was something different, right? So I'm just going to remove that as well. So the tabs are still there, and then you can upload the right document, you know? But yeah, best practices or easiest practice would be for you to upload the documents into the right tabs and then email them out of there to the title company or to the mortgage broker, you know? Because it's just simple to do, and then you also have a history in your thing that you did. If you want to email it from your Gmail account, I don't care, you know.
Well, this is exposed to .loop processes. What I'm familiar with is emailing it as a share. They call it a share of documents.
Yeah.
You got to load your full entity or transaction with all of the data who you're sending it to, which is
So again, you can share the document by number one, emailing to them, or number two, inviting them to the roundtable. Again, I would not waste my time with the roundtable because they're going to get an invite, then they got to go there, they got to register and create a login for them, they got to remember the damn login so they can look at the things. They got to download the documents now into their desktop because they need it to have on their computer if they're a title company or a lender, you know what I mean? So it's useless. I mean, you're just wasting your time. You can do it if you want to. It's cute, you know. If somebody asks you, do you have it? Sure. But for most intents and purposes, just email them the file. If they're missing something, if the buyer wants everything or something. And again, when you're done, you can download a zip file copy for yourself if you want to keep an archive of all your transactions. And before I run, since I got to get going, I want to show you one more thing that's very, very important, and that is here. And obviously, you're going to have your active files, canceled, recent transactions, and so forth, but you got a report section here, okay? And so this report section here gives you your production history, your closing history, listing transaction issues, etc. Obviously, right now, you don't have any transactions yet. It's not going to give you much information. But let's say next year, come December, you want to see, okay, you know, what were all the transactions that I had, all the closings, you know, how much was my gross commission on them, how much was the split, did I pay any referral fees, did I pay any lead generation fees, you know, what was the average, you know, from the time they became a customer until they closed, yada, yada, yada. So you can get all of that information through the reporting section, you know. So it's definitely something worth drilling into. And that's pretty much it, you know. The start section here, just FYI, you can post your own things here, okay? So you can post announcements here as well. So here we're logged in as you, David. You can create an associate post. Have once, da-da-da.
And that would go to all the team members.
It'll go into the start section. It'll be there, but then you can also announce it, So if you create a post, let's say here, agent announcement. Hi, everyone. Happy to be part of the team. Okay. You can add a link URL if you're referencing something in the web. You can upload a file. You can just this is just a test. Ignore smiley face. Maybe I'll delete it, or we'll delete it. And then you can have it go to your office only or regional offices. I mean, right now, just have it go to your office only, since we don't have an Orlando office or Tampa office or anything. If you had a request for something in another area and we are in Miami, then you could obviously post it just to that office, okay? And can other people comment? Sure, you can comment on it. So then you go here and you can add more media, and you can go here and announce the post. When you click on announce the post, you can add recipients and it'll actually send an email out to them. Because, if it's just sitting up here in the start section, then no one's going to see it unless they log in, when they go into BackAgent. So if it's something really important, then you can announce the post, which will send out an email to everyone that you want to announce it to. Okay.
Right, I sent a Thanksgiving thing to agents at Realty Partners. Am I allowed to do that?
No, you're not.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So I'm going to remove this post now.
That goes with your pies.
Yeah. Yeah, we the only corporate can email to that list.
Right, okay.
Yes.
And that's Coldwell Banker had that same thing as well. And I did it and I thought, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
I mean, just fast forward. We got 10,000 agents, and then Glenda decides, you know what, I'm going to start my own company, and I'm going to give you guys a great deal. Everyone that's going to join me this week is going to get a $5,000 cap, So, but
so how do I send then?
Through here, you can post an announcement here,
Okay.
and then you can announce it to the team.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Quick, before you go, recruiting.
Yes.
Are you still being recorded?
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording now because I'm start wrapping up while we can.
I can talk later.
Okay, I'm going to close this.